Hi everybody, this lesson today is going to talk about angle bisectors, and we are in lesson 2.4. Let's go ahead and get started. So when we talk about the word angle bisector, an angle bisector cuts the angle exactly in half. And I used to be an English teacher, and I like to think about how words are created and where they came from. So you guys probably know that the prefix bi means two, right? And you probably know, well, maybe you can know, but you can figure it out, that the word sect is like to cut. So like what would that be? Like a section is like a piece of it. It was cut off of it. So bisector cuts it exactly in half. It cuts it in two pieces, but those two pieces have to be exactly in half. So an angle bisector is a ray that divides an angle into two adjacent angles that are congruent. Adjacent means stuck together. If you ever heard that word adjacent, it means stuck together. And those are congruent. And remember, congruent means equal. Okay, let's look at our example. And I had a typo up there a minute ago. So if you already copied some things down, you might want to double check so you don't have the typo. All right, it says if ray BD is an angle bisector, that means it cuts it in half, then angle ABD is congruent to angle DBC. And when we mark an angle, and if they both have one little arc on them like that, that means those are congruent to each other, they're equal to each other. Let's look at some examples. If EG is the bisector of angle DEF, find the two angle measures that are not given in the diagrams. Okay, if this is the angle bisector, then this part is congruent to this part. In other words, if this is 52, this one is also 52 degrees. So it says find the two angle measures. We could say that the measure of angle DEG is 52 degrees. And we could also say that the larger outside angle is 104. And if you're not sure where I got that 104 from, I added 52 plus 52, and that gave me 104. Okay, I think I'm trying to go too fast. This little arc shows that this whole thing is 64. If this is a bisector, then this piece is congruent or equal to this piece. So if we want to find one of those, we have to take 64 degrees and divide by 2, which is 32 degrees. So that means each of these angles has a measure of 32 degrees. So in other words, the measure of angle DEG is 32, and the measure of GEF is 32, because GE is an angle bisector. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, but now we have some variables. So if BD is the angle bisector of angle ABC, then that means that this part is congruent to this part. Find the measure of the angles. Okay, if they're congruent to each other, then we can set them equal to each other. So I'm going to make this equation say 3x is equal to x plus 20, because those two pieces, they're equal. I need to solve this for x. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. That gives me 2x equals 20. I'm going to divide by 2, and that's going to give me x is equal to 10. If I go back to the question, it says find the measure of angles ABD, that's this one, and DBC, that's the other one. They should be equal. What we're going to do is we're going to take that 10 and we're going to plug it in for this x and plug it in for this x. And so when we do that, this is going to give us 3 times 10, which is 30. And this one's going to give us 10 plus 20, which is also 30. So each of these is 30 degrees. All right, let's look at the next example. Once again, this is the angle bisector. If it is the bisector, then those two pieces are congruent to each other. If they're congruent to each other, we can set them equal to each other. So I'm going to set my equation equal to each other like this. In order to avoid, well, I was thinking about avoiding some negatives. Let me just try adding the 25. I went that way to try to avoid some negatives, and it'll work to avoid negatives this way. Next thing is let's subtract 6x. You could have done a number, 4 different things on that first step. I chose the 25. All right, so we add the 25, we subtract 6x, that leaves us with 40 is equal to 4x. We divide by 4, and we get x equals 10. Once again, we need to go back and see what do the angles measure. We might need a calculator for this one. Okay, so for this first one, I'm going to plug in my x. I'm going to plug a 10 in there, and that's going to give me 10 times 10 minus 25. That's 100 minus 25, and that is 75. When I go to the other one, I should get 75 again. Let's check. Okay, so I'm going to plug in my 10. I get 6 times 10 plus 15. That's 60 plus 15, and yes, that is also 75 degrees. So the measure of each of these is 75 degrees. What about the measure of the whole thing? It didn't ask for the measure of the whole thing, but what would that whole angle be? Like the measure of angle ABC. Well, again, it didn't ask us, but if we did, we would just add 75 plus 75, and that would give us 150. Okay, last two problems, because on the next page, we're skipping it. So that means these are our last two problems. It says draw a picture and then find the value of x and the measure of angles. So we're doing three things. We're drawing a picture, we're finding x, and we're finding the angles. Let's draw the picture first. Okay, RQ bisects angle PRS. Let me draw angle PRS. Okay, here's my diagram. I have angle PRS and I have RQ bisecting it. Now, it's hard to draw exactly, so that's a big reason why we put these little markings in there to show us they're congruent, even though they might not look exactly the same because I'm not perfect at drawing, but they are. And those little marks say they are. So then they tell us that angle PRQ, the measure of angle PRQ is x plus 40, and the measure of angle QRS is 3x minus 20. Okay, so I've marked everything I need to mark. I'm supposed to find x. The way I'm going to find x is I'm going to set these two equal to each other. All right, so I'm going to try to avoid my negatives again. I'm going to subtract x. Remember, when you subtract x, what you're really doing is subtracting 1x. Okay, so this is 3x minus 1x, because sometimes people forget that that 1 is there. All right, so we subtract 1x, and on the left we get a 40. On the right we get a 2x minus 20. I'm solving for x, so I need to add my 20 to both sides. So I get 2x equals 60. I have to divide by 2 to get my x all by itself, and I get x is 30. All right, I know we're not done because we had to do three things. Draw a picture, did that. Find the value of x, did that. And find the measure of the angles. We need to take this 30 and plug it in. Okay, if we plug it into the top one, we get 70 degrees. If we plug it into the bottom one, we also get 70 degrees because 3 times 30 is 90, minus 20 is 70. So both of them are 70. That's a little bit of a check because they're supposed to be. If it bisects, they should be equal, and they are. All right, last problem. I've set up the diagram. Can you label it? Go ahead and put the letters where you think they belong. Okay, your diagram should look like this. Angle ABC is the larger outside angle, and it says BD bisects it. That means it cuts it exactly in half. So I'm going to label them that way. And now I'm going to also label my angles. Angle ABD is 2x plus 50. And angle DBC is 5x plus 5. I need to solve and find x. The way I do that, they're congruent, it's a bisector. I'm going to set them equal to each other. So my equation is going to be 2x plus 50 is equal to 5x plus 5. All right, I need to solve for x. Four things I could do. First, I think I'm going to subtract 2x. I subtracted x because I didn't want to deal with negatives, and this is going to help me avoid the negatives. Okay, so I have a 50 on the left, 3x plus 5. I need to subtract 5. That gives me 45 equals 3x. Divide by 3. And I get x equals 15. Okay, I do need to plug those in plug in that 15 and find out what I get for my angles. I'm getting kind of crunched for space here. Okay, I know you're not able to do this, but I moved my stuff over so I had more room. So I need to plug in my 15. I'm going to get 2 times 15 plus 50. I'm going to get my calculator. I'm going to work that out. I'm going to work up here. I'm getting really crowded. So I got 30 plus 50, and that's 80. I'm going to take 15 and plug it in the bottom. So when I plug it in there, I go 5 times 15 plus 5. Take it on my calculator, get 75 plus 5, that's 80 degrees. Again, they match up, they're supposed to. So this one is 80, this one is 80, and what's the whole thing equal? The whole thing is 160, because ABC, that's the whole thing, is 80 plus 80, that's 160. Okay, that is to the end of today's video. When we come back to class, we'll do some more practice.